Can you please rise, please?
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Charles Sellers, and I'm the acting superintendent of Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. On behalf of the staff and the community of Plains, I would like to welcome you to today's President's Day celebration. We are honored that President and Mrs. Carter are with us and have consented to once again give all of us an up-close and personal look at their life during and after their years in the White House. The program today will consist of questions posed to President and Mrs. Carter from students across the state of Georgia. This is especially fitting since Plains High School is the state school of Georgia. I imagine that as you sit in this auditorium and roam the halls here at Plains High School, you likely reflected on your educational experiences. The experiences we have impact who we become. Plains High School and the community of Plains helped shape the lives of those who attended here. Although it no longer serves as a traditional school, it is home to an educational program that serves students beyond the boundaries of Sumter County. Through a partnership with the Georgia Department of Education, Friends of Jimmy Carter National Historic Site, and the National Park Service, students are able to experience hands-on, curriculum-based opportunities to learn about the life and legacy of President and Mrs. Carter. Our education staff provides the tools to help those who visit here to make a personal connection to this place as well, a place that has seen one of its own rise to the highest public office. As we celebrate today, we have special guests here that I would like to recognize. Please hold your applause. Georgia Department of Education staff, Lanier County High School students, staff, and family, Georgia Southwestern State University staff and students, Columbus State University staff and students, South Georgia Technical College staff and students, Georgia Cyber Academy students, staff, and family, Peach County 4-H staff and students, Houston County 4-H staff and students, Marion County students and staff, Jimmy Carter Historic Site Education Advisory Council members, Friends of Jimmy Carter National Historic Site board members, Representative Mike Chokas, Mr. Jody Redding from Senator Johnny Isaacson's office, Ms. Kathy Burns from Senator David Perdue's office, and Ms. Tammy Jones from Congressman Sanford Bishop's office. Thank you again for joining us. I will now ask our education specialist, Marley Ussery, to lead the student questions.
Good morning. As Charlie said, my name is Marley Ussery. I am the education specialist here at the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. I have the coolest job in the world because I get to teach the children all over Georgia and the United States about the life and legacy of President and Mrs. Carter. I am honored to serve in that position. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Georgia Department of Education today to the State School of Georgia. The students today will be asking questions of President and Mrs. Carter, and they will introduce themselves as they come to the mic. They will come individually, and I think that it is very befitting that the first question that is going to be asked today is actually about education.
Good morning, President Carter.
Good morning.
My name is Keenan Solomon, and I am a 8th grade student from Fort Valley, Georgia. My question is, President Carter, you have always been a champion for public education, establishing the adequate program for education in Georgia as governor, and creating the Department of Education cabinet position when you served as president. What are your thoughts on the current state of public education in our country today?
I'm going to take this down so I can see you. Okay, Charles. Well, when I began my public service career, I was just serving as a chairman of the Sumter County School Board. And all the governor candidates and others were campaigning, raising one finger and saying, no, not one, which meant not a single black child would enter a white school. And I decided to try to save the public school system from shutting down. So I ran for the state senate and was eventually elected, and I served on this education committee. That was the only one I asked for. And I was I was chairman of the subcommittee on universities. Later, when I ran for president, I saw that one of the primary services of the education department there was just underneath health and welfare. It was health, education, and welfare. But health and welfare were very powerful organizations, and the education department was practically non-existent. The only thing they did was to defend lawsuits involving racial segregation. So I decided to form a brand new Department of Education, which we did when I was president. And so that was a major commitment of mine. I'm still very interested in education. I see today that I would say that we have the best university system in the world. With our university system here in Sumter County, with Georgia Southwestern College, where Rosa and I both attended, with Harvard and Yale and Georgia Tech and Georgia and so forth, we have an excellent higher education system. I think to be perfectly honest about it, I think the elementary and secondary school system has not made as much progress in quality as the university system has. And one of the reasons for that is the schools are basically being resegregated. Now, the African-American schools that I know about in the Atlanta area are almost completely African-American only and have very few white students, and that exists all over the country now. So we have a long way to go to bring our school curriculum combined together to serve one group of people on an equal basis. So there are many reforms that have been attempted in the United States in education, but looking at the statistics, the records from graduate students in high school, we rank quite low as far as other countries like South Korea and so forth in achievement in the knowledge of mathematics and even our own language. So I say, to be frank about it, that we're very proud of public education system. I hope it stays public and that the public school system will be very strong in the future, and it has been in the past. But we have a long way to go to equal what other countries are doing. And I'm very grateful that we now have a very strong education system as far as the government is concerned, because education is now, I would say, on an equal basis with health and welfare, contrary to what it was before I became president. So we have a great university system, a good elementary and secondary school system, but it can be better.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Carter. My name is Jacob Turner. I'm an 8th grade Peach County 4-H'er. And Mrs. Carter, in 1991, you helped launch the Every Child by Two program, a nationwide campaign to protect children from vaccine-preventable diseases by raising awareness for the critical need for timely infant immunization. What are your thoughts on the non-medical exceptions that allow children to attend school without vaccines, that if their parents or guardians express a personal objection?
I'm distressed when anybody has an objection about the children going to school. And I've worked on immunization for many, many years. When Jimmy was elected president, only either 15 to 17 states required education by school age, and required immunization by school age. And so I worked with Betty Bumpers. Betty Bumpers' husband was the governor when Jimmy was governor. We would go to governors' conferences, and the wives, they were all wives back then, the wives would get together and talk about what we were doing. I was working on mental health, she was working on immunization. So she got me interested, and I developed a really, really good immunization program in Georgia. Then when I got to Washington, her husband went to the Senate straight from being governor. Jimmy stayed out for 2 years and stayed out of government, campaigning for president. And so when we got there, Betty called me and said, let's work on immunization. And so we started the program, and the first year Jimmy was president, we got immunization required by school age in every single state in the United States. I celebrated. We celebrated. But there was not one word. We had a big meeting and brought people in from all over the country that we had worked with. Not one word in the paper or the press about it. But anyway, Betty and I celebrated. And she later told me that she called me to see if she could come to see me about immunization, because she'd been in Washington 2 years and never had seen the inside of the White House. She was teasing.
Thank you.
Your question was about people who opt out of immunizations, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It is too easy to opt out. We've really, Betty and I both really struggled with that. And right now in the United States there are areas where people have opted out. And in California, for instance, one child came in from being overseas with the measles. She infected 6 different people who got off the airplane going in different directions. And that spread. That was one of the things a good while ago, a good few years back, that spread all across lots of states because of that one child coming home. And the areas now in the United States where people have opted out, San Diego, California was one, where if one case comes in, so many are not immunized that there are threats of epidemics. And it's really distressing. Right now in Seattle, there's a big epidemic of measles. And so we've struggled with it and worked with it, and we have a program called Every Child by Two. When we got all of the children immunized by school age, we started working on trying to get the 2-year-olds immunized, because when there's an epidemic, a problem, they're the ones that get the disease, because the school-age children are immunized. And so in that Every Child by Two program, we are still working all over this country to try to keep people from opting out, and we have had some luck in passing a couple of legislation in a few states to make it more difficult. But it's just, it just upsets me so bad when people can be immunized and the parents won't let them have the immunizations. There was a man who he said that measles immunization caused autism, and that's what started this whole thing. But we actually found out that he did a survey of the children at his grandson or grandchild's birthday party. And then he wrote it up. He was well respected. It was in a well-known health magazine. He has since been disqualified from practicing medicine anymore. So, a long rambling answer, but it just upsets me so much I have to talk about it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Mr. President Carter. My name is Jasmine Chenault, and I am a 12th grade student from Decatur, Georgia. My question for you is there one foreign policy decision that you made as president that turned out better than you expected?
Well, there were several that turned out better than I expected, but one of them was, that I remember well, was the Panama Canal treaties. Before I became president, a lot of the Latin American countries had broken diplomatic relations with our country in anger because we were not treating Panama fairly. We had basically cheated them when we got a clear title to the Panama Canal zone. So I worked on that, as had my predecessors in office, President Ford and President Johnson, and even back to President Eisenhower had worked on it. And so I was determined to bring about a complete Panama Canal treaty, and we gave back the control of the canal to Panama. Since then, they have almost 10 times as much revenue from the canal. They've widened it well, and they're taking much better care of it than we did. But I think the main advantage that I didn't anticipate was that this was kind of a way to break down two things. One was the animosity or hatred that a lot of Latin American countries had toward the United States because they thought we were not treating Panama fairly. But the other thing was that almost every country in South America at that time, when I became president, was a dictatorship. They didn't have any democracy in a lot of countries. And within 5 years after the Panama Canal was implemented, every country in South America became a democracy. So freedom of relationship between people and the government had a big lead, and also democracy came to that country, and friendship between those countries and our country became much greater, all because we treated Panama fairly with the Panama Canal Treaty. So I think that was a time when I didn't anticipate much coming out of it, except just to give them back the canal, but then the impact of that was very beneficial, far beyond what I expected. Thank you very much for your good question.
Thank you, President Carter.
Good morning, Mrs. Carter. My name is Alyssa Lunsford, and I'm a 10th grade student from Peach County. Mrs. Carter, while serving as First Lady of Georgia and the United States, you advocated for the welfare of the nation's mentally ill and the elderly. You were instrumental in creating a bill that was passed in 1980 to protect the rights of mentally ill from discrimination. Do you feel there is more work that needs to be done to advocate for the mentally ill and elderly in our healthcare systems today?
I have worked on mental health issues for 48 years, and I'm planning to make it 50 years. There is so much more to be done, but everything has changed since I began working on mental health issues, except stigma. And stigma is still so bad. It is sad to me to know that people don't go for help because they don't want to be labeled mentally ill. Today, mental illness, people can recover and lead good lives. It's just like physical illnesses now. And people don't know that. And I have done everything that I possibly know. The best program that I've had is bringing journalists to the Carter Center, and that's right, the Carter Center. I started that at the Carter Center. And teaching them how to write in depth and accurately about mental health issues. And we've trained many, many journalists. I have programs in South Africa, training journalists, Colombia in South America, several other countries, plus our country, of course. And hopefully it's helping, it's obviously helping a little bit. We have statistics to show that it's helping, but it's still, and still stigma exists. I think now that young people are going to change that, because on college campuses now, young people are going readily for mental health care, and I think that stigma, I think it's going to lift. Once it's already starting, I think it's going to lift rapidly now, and I'm excited about that.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Boswell. I'm a political science major and history minor at Georgia Southwestern State University, your alma mater. I'm also the president of the Student Government Association. President Carter, you were a victim of election fraud during your campaign for the Georgia State Senate in the 1960s. Voting and election fraud controversy continues today as recent state and national election results are questioned. What do you think needs to happen to alleviate voting irregularities in state and national elections?
Well, I think the greatest problem now in the American electoral system is that people are being discouraged from voting. And African Americans and older people and poor people particularly are kept off the voting list deliberately. If a state has a Republican legislature and a Republican governor, they make sure that that there's requirements to vote that are very difficult, like special kind of ID cards that a lot of people don't have, or a driver's license, which many of old people and poor people don't have because they don't own an automobile. So that's one of the main things, and a lot of cases are now before the Supreme Court. Another thing that these biased people do is to make is to change the makeup of electoral systems, that is congressional districts and in the state legislature. So sometimes they can even force legislators to change parties or to withdraw by completely removing any constituents from their districts. That has happened in this area as well. So I think that what's happened so far is that just to register to vote, about 60% of Americans are registered to vote. 40% of Americans are not being even permitted to register to vote, much less vote. And for instance, in Canada, about 93% of the people are registered to vote, compared to 60% in America. And in the countries like Sweden, almost 100% of the people are registered to vote. I think we need to have a drive to register people to vote. When I was governor, I tried to correct this problem. That was a long time ago. And I actually made all the principals of high schools to be voter registrars. So every year I had a contest among all the high schools of Georgia who could register the most upcoming 18-year-olds to be registered to vote. And so we had almost 100% of Georgia students were registered to vote when they became 18 years old. But when I got to be president, I found that the Congress wouldn't go along with that because we had too much opposition. So we still have a very serious problem with legislatures discouraging people from voting rather than encouraging people to vote. I would be in favor of universal registration. I think we need to have everybody, when they become 18 years old, unless there's something seriously wrong with them, to be registered to vote automatically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Carter. My name is Andrew Hatcher, and I am an 8th grade student from DeKalb County, Georgia. Mrs. Carter, you founded the Rosalind Carter Institute at Georgia Southwestern University to promote the status of caregivers. Please share some of the program successes of the Institute.
I did establish the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving, and that grew out of my mental health work. Because when we came home from the White House, Georgia Southwestern had a small endowment for a mental health program, and they wanted me to work with them. And by the time I had a program when Jim was governor, one when he was president, and now I have a really good program at the Carter Center. I had already established that one before I did the Georgia Southwestern one. And I didn't want to replicate the one I had in Atlanta. So it had to be about mental health, and so connected to mental health some way. And so we started trying to think of what to do, and finally decided to work with those caring for people with mental illnesses. But even before it started, before we got it going good, it had expanded to be to all caregivers. And we have some really good programs. The best one, I think, is working with veterans coming home, either still in the military or coming, but so many are coming home wounded and having to have care, and somebody to care for them. And we now have programs on the 12 states that have the largest military installations in them. And we developed an evidence-based program. An evidence-based program is one that's been worked on, all the kinks are out, and it works. There's evidence that it works. That will help caregivers. It cuts down on depression for the caregiver and the one receiving care. It makes fewer trips to the emergency room. That's one thing that's very prevalent with caregivers, having to go to the emergency room. And it makes for a better quality of life for the caregiver or the care receiver. One other of the programs we have, and that if you know anybody here, any of your friends who are caring for somebody and need help, you can call the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving, and we have a telephone program with the same program, and you can have it long distance, and that's another one. The first one we did, though, was for people caring for those with Alzheimer's, and that was really hard because people with somebody with Alzheimer's in the family doesn't particularly want everybody to know it. We didn't know that. It's just like military is the same way. If a military person develops post-traumatic stress disorder or some kind of mental illness, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to let anybody know, because if the officials in the military find out, they lost their job. They're out of the military. And so what we did with our Alzheimer's program, we found out we had to go into the person's home, and that worked. They don't mind, they'll come in, and so we started doing that. We developed the military program like that. We're working with a family, not working with a military person, and they always are very excited for us to be working with them. So it's a good program. I'm very proud of it. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Jacob Faircloth. I am a 9th grade student from Lakeland, Georgia. President Carter, what do you consider to be the characteristics of a good leader?
I think the first and basic characteristic of good leaders is to tell the truth. Because if you're going to lead say a group of people, you need for them to have confidence in that what you say is accurate, right? You can't get loyal followers, whether you're president of the United States or in high school or just in your own family, if they don't believe what you say. So I think to have a reputation for telling the truth, well learned, is good. You also need to be able to tell the truth to yourself, to analyze your own habits and make sure that what you're doing is proper. When I was in high school here at Plains, we had a superintendent named Miss Julia Coleman, and she used to tell us, give us advice. One of the things that she said that I remember quite well was, we need to accommodate changing times, but cling to principles that never change. And so I think every human being in the world set certain standards of things within their consciousness and within their life to which they pay homage or observe, the things that never change. And telling the truth might be one of them. But also another one is caring for other people, right? Some people care for other people, some care for just only for themselves. And so I think that a great leader also has to be committed to certain principles. I was committed to keeping the peace and promoting human rights. You know, our country has been at war, I think, too many times. My father was in the First World War. He was a first lieutenant in the First World War. I was in the Second World War. I was in the Navy, and I was on a submarine in the Pacific Ocean during the Korean War. And then my son was a student at Georgia Tech, my oldest son, and he resigned from Georgia Tech and volunteered to go to Vietnam. His name was Jack. So you see, our country has been in existence for 242 years about, since it became a nation. We've only been completely at peace for 16 years. 16 years out of 242 years, our country's been at peace. So I think to promote being at peace is one of those things that people have for things that don't change in their lives. So I think that being completely committed to the best interests of the people that you serve is another thing that we need to be as a leader. So I say, tell the truth, setting principles for yourself that never change, and also giving first priority to the well-being of the people that you serve and try to treat them all equally, no matter what kind of race they are, whether they're men or women, or whether they're immigrants or just applying to be new citizens. All of us were basically descended from immigrants at one time. So those are some of the things that I would think would be a good leader. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Carter. My name is Fariha Muhammad, and I am a 10th grade student from Leesburg, Georgia. Looking back, is there anything you would change regarding the years you served as president?
Well, I would be reelected as president. I don't think one thing I would change, but I would say that the one basic problem I had was preparing the Democratic Party to be loyal to me. I was one of the few presidents that was incumbent that had another very strong Democrat run against him for presidency, and that kind of divided the Democrats instead of having us all united. So I had a very strong Democratic opponent who ran against me. But when I was president, we also had a very good relationship with Democrats and Republicans. We were very friendly with each other back in those ancient days, and we always cooperated with each other as best we could. And whenever I was getting ready to introduce legislation to the Congress, we would invite in the leaders of the Republican Party and the leaders of the Democratic Party to help us draft the legislation. So that when it came to the floor for a vote, we got strong support from Democrats and Republicans. So I think the one particular thing that I did that I would change was in the rescue operation for hostages were being held by Iran back in 1979 and 80. We ran out of helicopters. We had 6 helicopters that were necessary to bring all our hostages back home. And the military recommended to me 7, and I said we need to increase it and make it 8. So we had 2 extra ones, but we lost 2 of our helicopters, and then we lost a 3rd one in an accident, so we didn't have enough helicopters to bring out people home. So I think if we had been successful with that rescue operation, if I had sent only 1 helicopter, then I think I would have been re-elected president. But the country survived without me, so I think it's not a big tragedy. Thank you very much for your good question. That's a difficult one to answer.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, President Carter. My name is Lily Lyons, and I'm a 9th grade student from Lanier County, Georgia. President Carter, what do you consider to be your single greatest achievement as president?
I have mixed emotions about what the greatest one was. I think that the one that I got the most favorable reaction from the public back in those days and now was making peace between Israel and Egypt. We had a very long negotiation, 13 days at Camp David, and I was successful in getting peace agreed between Israel and Egypt. And now it's been more than 40 years, and not a single word of that peace treaty has been violated. So that's what I get most credit for. I think, though, the thing that gives me the most gratification is keeping our country at peace. I tell you, we have been at peace for 16 years and all since our country was founded. 4 of those years was when I was president. So I'm glad we've been able to keep our country at peace. I think another thing of which I'm proud is we've promoted human rights. So keeping the peace and promoting human rights, I think we're very successful. I think that the thing that had the most effect on the long-term history, that is, since I was president, was normalizing the relation with China. We have been in war with China twice, shortly before I became president. Once in the Korean War, where we fought against North Korea, but China was fighting against us. And then it was in the Vietnam War. We fought against the Vietnamese, but the Chinese were against us. And since that time, since 1979, China has not been in war with anybody since that time. So we've had peace in Asia pretty much since that happened. And China has changed completely. Before that, China had no human rights in the country. They didn't have any free enterprise. And Deng Xiaoping, who was a leader of China, said that we're going to have peace, reform, and opening up. And China was close to the rest of the world then. Now China has, embassies and relationships with almost every country in the world. So I think in the long term, affecting future history, the normalizing of relations with China and the changes that have taken place in China have been the most effective things that I've ever done, which may have made a kind of a competition for the United States as far as the number one economic power on earth, which is rapidly becoming China. But I think in the long run, it has been a very strong factor in maintaining the peace, of which I've already mentioned. Thank you for your question.
Ms. Carter, what do you consider to be your greatest achievement as First Lady of the United States?
What's your greatest achievement as First Lady?
I think I'm identified more with my mental health work than anything else because I've worked on it so long. And I hope that I have contributed in some way to making life better for people living with mental illnesses.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you both.
Good morning, President Carter.
Morning.
My name is Kendall Kaysen. I'm a junior at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia. My question is, while serving as governor of Georgia, you appointed more women and minorities to your own staff, to major state boards and policies and agencies, and to the judiciary than all of your predecessors combined. You continued this practice as president by appointing a record number of women and minorities to federal government offices. In 2018, women and minority candidates broke records for winning seats in the U.S. House and Senate. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm very proud of that. When I became president, there were very few women judges, well, diplomats, as well as not very many women in the House and Senate of the United States. But as you say, we had a kind of exposure on that since I was president and so forth. I was lucky enough to appoint more women judges than all of the presidents who ever served before I got to be president. So I was the 39th president, but I appointed more than the other 38 presidents put together. And I'm very proud of that. I think that equality of treatment of men and women, for instance, is a major thing that we need to work for in this country, and equal treatment of African Americans and Hispanics and so forth, regardless of race, is very important. I think that's one of the things that I have learned from my Christian faith, because as you know, the Bible says that there's no difference in God's eyes between a Jew and a Gentile. There's no difference in God's eyes between a slave and a master. There's no difference in God's eyes between a man and a woman. And so I think all people are treated equally. So that's what I try to do as president, and I'm very glad that I was able to elevate the status of women substantially when I was in office. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I want to say thank you so much to our students today for developing these questions and for having the strength and to stand up and address President Mrs. Carter. President Mrs. Carter, do you have any closing comments that you would like to make?
Well, I want to add my congratulations to yours, to the students who contrived these answers. They're very thought-provoking. I had to spend a lot of time getting prepared for it, and I think the questions really went a long way. The answers we gave to tell them a lot about the White House and the experience that we had as the first family of Georgia and also the first family of the United States. I think our country, over a period of history, has had a lot of problems, but we have a great ability in the United States because of the heterogeneous nature, the difference in the makeup of our population to solve our problems and to go into better things, and we've been able to do that in every case. And we have setbacks now, disappointments, politically or otherwise. I think our country has within us the ability to correct our mistakes when we make them and to be able to do better things. So I have great confidence in America, and you've given us a chance to express this in quite a good way. And I'm joined with Marty in thanking you for the excellent questions that you provided. Thank you again.
I want to say that you've been a good audience, been so quiet and so still. And I think that, why don't we end this by everybody saying Happy President's Day, okay? Happy President's Day. You can do better than that. Happy President's Day.
We will have a few directions for the end of our program as far as how we will do the book signing, and I'll invite him to come up. I do want to add very quickly, I forgot to do that before, that in attendance today we have over 200 students from area high schools all over Georgia, and some of our area universities and technical colleges. So thank you, students, and thank you to your teachers for getting you here today. So I'm going to turn the microphone back over, and you'll have some directions as to how we'll actually be doing the book signing and so forth.
Directions for me too.
Well, I too want to say thank you to President and Mrs. Carter for taking the time to be with us today. And thank you to all of the students for attending and participating as well. And Marley, thank you, but I'd have to say that I have the best job in the world. I'd also like to thank the National Park Service staff and the volunteers for helping us make this President's Day celebration a success.